a kind of person who is very, very, very cool is a poverty denier. A poverty denier is someone we're seeing a lot of right now in Australia, as poverty is something we're hearing more about. People are struggling. Their lives are getting harder and harder and harder. They can't afford the basic necessities. They are struggling terribly. Life is awful for them. They're suicidal. It's horrific to witness, and it's terrifying to think of the implications for yourself. Could this be me? How many steps would it take for me to get there, to that level of poverty? How far away is it from where I am right now? But there are poverty deniers who, when they are presented with these stories of poverty, what they do is they say, well, I've been overseas and I've seen, and you just want to sew their lips shut, don't you? Yes, you've been overseas and you've seen real poverty. Thank you. That's great. You're helping. Your input is valuable. We love to hear from you. Please, any other feedback you have from your overseas trips that taught you about real poverty. My God, I've been overseas. I've seen poverty that blew my mind. Actually, in the United States, I saw poverty that fucking just blew my hair back. But somehow this didn't complete the chemical process whereby I returned to my own country, and when a person says, I am struggling, my life is a nightmare, help, 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 I'm not a poverty denier about it. I take the person at their word. But see, this shit is happening in the context of a Labor government here in Australia, supposedly a progressive government. Labor, the workers' movement, the Labor movement, people power, grassroots struggle. None of this real shit is represented by the current Labor government, which is the most disappointing Australian government I've ever witnessed. I would suggest in living memory we have not seen a more disappointing Australian government. When a Conservative government gets in, you know what they're like. They're cunts. That's what you get from them. That's what happens. But Labor, today, the ALP government has taken credit for an extremely marginal raise in the rate of welfare handout to people who are struggling. I'm quite happy to call it a handout. I don't see anything wrong with handouts. I've got no problem with the idea of welfare. Last week, the Australian Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, referred to people on welfare as people who are a burden on welfare. Fuck me, you fucking cunt. Anthony Albanese, what a cunt. What a see you next Tuesday. Welfare, like, you can't be a burden on welfare. You pay for welfare with your taxes that come out of your pay. That's your money that the government is giving you. I think this is a fact that's, well, okay, Apparently, it's not a fact. Apparently, each of us is an individual business, and we're all in this alone, not together. And what government has to do is get out of the way of the thrusting, urgent, palpitating, throbbing, hot, wet, 12-inched businessman or woman who simply wants to have the brakes taken off, the limits removed, all barriers lowered, gates opened, the path cleared for their success, for my success. I deserve to be successful. Well, no, I don't deserve to be successful, but I'm prepared to put in the hard work, the hard yakka, prepared to do the hard yards. I'm up and at 'em every morning. I'm out there, I'm having a go, I'm making an effort. It's my life, I'm living it. I'm raking in the dollars. I'm investing. And you too could do this if you believed in personal responsibility. You know, of course, conservatism is a dog shit way of thinking that's all about justifying your own privilege. It's a mentality you take on to justify how fucking good you've got it, and to act as cover while you behave like a piece of shit as you hang on. You hang on to everything you've got. And you don't let a government take it away from you with taxation. Oh, no. I mean, like, I don't even give a fuck. Tax, money, numbers. To me, these are concepts almost alien to my way of thinking. I'm a creative person. I float around like a butterfly. I have my little ideas, and I make my little things. And I would like my path cleared, and I would like to not have to think about conservative bullshit or extremely disappointing so-called progressive conservatives, a government, supposedly a progressive government, that in 100 days of governance has done all sorts of shit, has proven it is more than capable of signing pieces of paper so projects can go ahead, as long as they are things like fossil fuel extraction. They have proven that they are highly competent. But on the one hand, they're trying to tell us that there has to be, it's absolutely imperative that affluent, wealthy Australians get a tax cut. And on the other hand, that they can't raise the welfare rate, the dole. Government handouts must be strictly limited, because the important thing is to get people into employment. Jobs, jobs, jobs. We can't have people lazing about accepting government handouts. They should be out there getting jobs. And what are these jobs? Well, the jobs, okay, so there are lots of jobs. There's lots and lots of jobs And what happens if you turn up to these jobs is you say to the employer, so what's required at this job? And the employer will tell you what's required. And you will say, oh, look, I don't currently meet the requirements for this job, but if you're prepared to train me, I think we're going to be laughing like two fat spiders. And the employer says, fuck you, cunt. I'm not training any cunt because I'm an employer. I'm not a trainer. You should go to TAFE. You should go to some educational institution where they give you jobs training. Oh, what's that? They closed all of those down. Oh, well, that's not my problem because I'm a small businessman. A small businessman. Imagine calling yourself a small businessman. Oh, yeah, I run a small business. Do you, cunt? You run a small business, do you, cunt? Is that right, cunt? You run a fucking small business. What does your small business fucking do, cunt? What do you actually do? Because when you say businessman, that's meaningless. All that tells me is that you are part of the widespread, rampant looting complex. You're only interested in working out how to get a drink out of every step of every part of any fucking process you are involved in. You're not telling me that there is a point to your life, that there's something that you do. I'll put it in your language. I don't think that there's any value add for society with what you do when you tell me you're a small businessman. You tell me you're a small businessman. I'm really enjoying this, by the way. This is fucking great. Really just getting it off my chest today. These fucking cunts. I'm a small businessman. This is how you end up, right, with a situation like when it's normal to be a small businessman instead of being punched in the face for being a cunt who calls himself a small businessman, you end up with a society that is crumbling. It's crumbling faster and faster. I mean, I'm not one of these preppers, but you know. People are dying all the time in my home state because the number that you call, okay, that's an old-fashioned way to ring a phone, isn't it? The number that you call in an emergency, they might not pick that up at the other end for like 45 minutes, by which time you died while you were waiting for the emergency services. Because why? Because we're so focused as a society on creating small businessmen. We're all going to be small businessmen. We're going to be small businessmen. We're all going to be small businessmen, and things like the number that you call when there's an emergency, who cares about that shit? Someone else can take care of that. And you would fucking think that at a time when we are coasting into climate emergency, we're there now. We're deeply in climate emergency, and it's going to get worse and worse. You would think that as a society, and this goes for all around the world, not just Australia, we would be galvanized, and our number one fucking reason for being would be preparing for emergencies. So things like, oh, a number that I call in an emergency, let's make sure that's working properly. That seems almost central to the whole emergency preparation, industrial complex. We're not preparing for emergencies. We aren't preparing for emergencies. And when an emergency, like a pandemic, for instance, when there's an emergency like that, we simply allow our medical health professionals to burn out, commit suicide, and fucking quit. Our health services are struggling. Our health people are absolutely struggling, and we're not helping them because nothing's ever an emergency. I mean, it is an emergency when it happens to me individually, but I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm focused on being a small businessman. I love living in a neoliberal nightmare. I love living in capitalism, which every day of my fucking life has made life on this planet more of an untenable, uh, less. It's making life unrealistic for human beings. We're building a society that, and this is across the globe, that can't sustain itself, that can't look after the people that are in it, and people that are in it don't think it should look after people. They say, I've been overseas and I've seen real poverty. Your poverty? Ha ha ha. That's a joke. I've seen real poverty. How dare you use the word poverty? I have traveled around the world 35 times. Because when I come back to Australia, I can live at my mummy's place until I save up some more money to go on my little trips around the world. Mm. We've got a we've got a government now in Australia. It's the most disappointing government in living fucking memory. And normal people who, many of whom are only a couple of steps away from poverty themselves, are barracking for this shit. They're not just barracking for it, they're attacking grassroots voices of struggle. Apparently, in places like the UK and the United States and Australia, struggle doesn't exist. If you're struggling, that's your fault. You're a piece of shit. You did that to yourself. You played yourself. You won the lottery of life by being born in these places, the Western world, the English-speaking Western world. But I put it to you that the English-speaking Western world, the one thing that it's produced, like the number one product, is fucking assholes. Just think of it like this. Boris Johnson, Prime Minister, boarding school boy, goes to a boarding school, he's sent there, and we know that kids are sent to these boarding schools to be sadistically abused and manipulated so that they then become the next caretakers of empire. These are our role models, these horrible caretakers of empire. We are blind to their evil, many of us. We look at someone like Winston Churchill. He's a hero. No, he was a racist, fucking mass murdering cunt. Our heroes, these boarding school fucking animals, another example, superhero movies. It's amazing. It's amazing that we're obsessed with superhero movies. What's a superhero? Somebody who responds to a fucking emergency. Meanwhile, we don't. You don't need superpowers to respond to a fucking emergency. All you got to do is pick up the phone and say, hey, what? Fuck. Okay, hang on. No, I'll get someone. There you go. Emergency. I'm a fucking superhero. I picked up the phone. This is a society of cunts who aren't picking up the phone. Except you and me, of course. We are fucking lovely. My God. We are beautiful and majestic creatures of grace, forgiveness and kindness, warmth, generosity, and good taste. Thank God for people like us.